Fallout Equestria, Survivors Guilds. Prologue. At the end. War. War never changes. Funny, I never really gave that phrase much thought when ponies said it during the Great War. As the war raged on, things didn't really go very well. In fact, we had already lost from the beginning. The war with the zebras was bad, and it pushed us all to extremes that we believed that we'd never be forced to. Even the best of us were torn down by the war. It forced us to do things that we had never imagined we would do. Me and my friends, we thought we were doing the right thing, and we thought we could save ponies. Not just ponies, but everything from the coming fire. That's why we built the stables. That's why we set out to do everything we could to make sure that Equestria would be preserved. And the ponies we trusted with it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. My Celestia, I still miss the old days, from before the war, when all I had to worry about was my friends and having to get our cutie marks. Funny, really. After all the time I spent earning mine, I lost it. I didn't think I'd be alive after all this. I almost wasn't, but some pony special to me saved my life. I just wish that I could tell her thank you. See her just one more time. There was a cough, and after a few moments of silence there was a groan. An orange-colored Pegasus with a purple mane looked up at the cloud-covered sky with a pained look in her eyes. Scootaloo, the first Dashite, the former vice president of Stapletech, was dying. She had been exiled from the clouds because she rejected the Enclave's ideals, and she was dying for her trouble. She just barely managed to speak again, and she was recording a message in hopes that someday, some pony would be able to just listen to it, and maybe. If you find this, there is a shack marked on it. I traced Rainbow Dash to there. I think she's living there. Or was recently. Wasn't there when I looked, but I'm heading back. Going to wait there. Hope she returns. I should be there for her, like she's with me. Some pony should be there. Scootaloo coughed again. Just want Dash to know. We didn't all... She's not alone. Scootaloo took off her pip-buck as it finished recording, and she placed it under the rock in the secret place hidden under it. She took a deep breath and started to make her way back towards the shack. She coughed again, looking at her hoof, and there was blood. She kept fighting on, though. She wanted to get back to the shack so she could hopefully see her idol again. Come on, Scootaloo, you can make it, she said, trying to move forward more towards the shack. She knew that she was dying, but she just had to have that hope that somehow, maybe she could see Rainbow Dash just one more time. The Pegasus just kept walking, but eventually she just collapsed. She couldn't go any further. She looked up and she could see the shack from here, but it was just too far away. She reached into her bags and took out a photograph of her and a dark blue Pegasus stallion, and a young filly with light blue fur with a purple mane and tail. Skywalker. Cloudy. I'm so sorry, she said weakly, remembering her husband and her daughter. What were they going to think of her? She'd been exiled from the clouds, from her family, all because she wanted to do the right thing. Stay safe. She sighed and closed her eyes. She'd just rest for a little while. Then there was a fluttering of wings above the ground, and Scootaloo laid there unconscious. A set of cyan hooves landed, and the pony folded her wings at her side. Scootaloo! Rainbow Dash said, and rushed forward and picked up the orange mare in her forehooves. Come on, Squirt, wake up! Please don't die on me here! Rainbow Dash? Scootaloo asked, her eyes flickering open, and she saw the mare with the purple eyes. You made it. That's right, Scootaloo. I'm here. You're gonna be okay. I promise, Rainbow Dash said, wishing she had some sort of type of medical supply on her. Goodbye, Rainbow Dash, she said weakly. Thank you for being my sister. Please, don't. Scootaloo's eyes closed. Her breathing was starting to slow, and she was still alive, but Rainbow Dash held her close. There wasn't anything she could do for her little sister. She couldn't help but just cry. 210 years later. Hey, what's in here? The stallion asked as he pushed through the wall of a building. No clue, his companion, a Pegasus mare, said as she poked her head in. Looks like an old ministry facility. The inside was still falling apart from the apocalypse, but it was relatively intact. There were a few bits of old equipment lying there and here, but nothing that was too obviously valuable. The two ponies were scavengers, ponies who searched the old ruins for anything valuable. Not really much worth scavenging, the mare said. Looks like a Ministry of Awesome facility used this for storage. Yeah, let's take what we can, the stallion said as he removed a tarp and stepped back, shocked to find something strange, a pod device. under with it a pony inside of it, and a stallion brushed some of the dust off and looked inside. Tawny, come look this! What is... Tawny said as she galloped over the pod and looked inside it with a gasp. There's some pony alive in here. Let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps, the stallion said. Wait, no, we should check out the terminal, Tawny said as she hacked into the terminal, and a minute later information popped up on the screen. Subject, unknown. Status, alive. Medical condition, healthy with a slight mutation from radiation. Stasis status, powered 3%. Open pod, yes or no. Tawny looked at her companion for a moment before turning back to the console. The pod is gonna fail. We should at least try to save whoever's in there. I don't know. We don't know who it is. They could be a killer or something, her companion pointed out. We should just let it fail. It's for the best. I don't think so. They could be any pony. Maybe we should at least give them a chance. Tawny, this is highly irregular, the stallion said, and Tawny just shook her head before hitting the Y key. The pod hissed as it started to open up, and there was a slight stirring from inside as the inhabitant opened her purple eyes. Leave me here, Rainbow, the voice came from inside. The two ponies exchanged a long glance as they were trying to figure out what to do about this. Back then, I didn't know what to expect from the outside world, but I was able to take my first steps into the outside world. Rainbow Dash, you didn't have to save me, but thank you for your sacrifice. I'll never forget what you did for me. I just hope that I'll be able to make you proud, even if you are dead. I'm still gonna be the best pony I can be. Just, I wish you were here with me. I've got a lot to answer for and a lot to make up for, and even today, there's still wars to be fought. And war never changes. But ponies do. Chapter 1. The Remnant. Adversity is like a strong wind. It tears away from us, but the things that cannot be torn, so that we see ourselves as we really are. Arthur Golden. I opened my eyes and I found myself looking up. After so much time in the darkness, I'd expected to see the flames of Tartarus for everything I've done. This place wasn't exactly Elysium either, but actually come to think of it, it looked more like a storage room with crates strewn here and there based on the symbol on the wall. I'd say it was definitely from the Ministry of Awesome. I checked myself out. 4 legs, 4 hooves, muzzle, cutie mark. I'd check the rest later. Wait. A cutie mark? Wait. It was on my flank. It was an old shield and wing cutie mark instead of the brand that had been there before. What in Celestia's name was going on? Did whatever had saved my life heal my cutie mark too? Miss, are you okay? A mare's voice said, and I looked over to see a tan-colored Pegasus mare wearing torn clothing, standing there with a red-furred Earth Pony stallion. I'm fine, I think, I said with a groan and struggled to get to my hooves. Where am I? You're in an old storage facility from during the war, the mare answered as the mare helped me out. I'm Tawny, and this is Rusty. Scootaloo, I said as I got my hooves up slowly. Wait, but you're supposed to be dead, Rusty said, shocked. There was a skeleton found and buried in the message. You were supposed to have died 200 years ago, Tawny finished. I thought I was dead too. I don't really know how I got here, I said, rubbing my head before what she said actually registered. Wait, did you say 200 years? Was I in that thing for 200 years? A little over it, probably, Rusty said. I couldn't believe it. Somehow it survived for over 200 years. That must have been a magical stasis pod like the ones we had built for Project Legacy. How did I even... My ears drooped when I realized the answer. Rainbow Dash must have brought me here. I couldn't help but think of the look on her face. She was gonna cry. She really did care about me. I just wish that I could have done something to thank her. I just had to wonder if it was her. Maybe something else had happened. I can't believe I've been here for so long, I said, taking a long look back at the pod. One question filled my mind, though. What do I do now? 2 days later, I had started moving towards central Equestria, towards something my traveling companions called Junction Town, the new Canterlot Republic. Apparently they'd been sent to scout out the area for the NCR. I couldn't believe how much Equestria had changed from the mega spells, but it seemed like these things were at least starting to recover. I checked the pistol that I'd found. It wasn't much, but, it was something. Even the cloud cover was gone. Thanks Celestia for that. Some pony had managed to break the cloud cover. Maybe that even meant that the Enclave was gone. would be great if they were. Honestly, this would be a lot faster if I could just fly. Curse my non-functional wings. That's when I heard the sound of something above me. I looked up in shock to see a massive purple and green dragon flying above me. Yeah, a dragon. I couldn't believe it. There was a freaking dragon. Oh crap, please don't eat me. Please don't eat me. I said, trying to find for cover, and I was shocked to see that the dragon landed right in front of me. Please, don't eat me, Mr. Dragon. I don't taste very good. I was surprised to hear him chuckling. I looked up to see him look at me with one green eye, and the other covered by an eye patch. Don't you recognize me, Scootaloo? He asked in a deep voice. I wasn't sure what to make of that. Well, I didn't really know very many dragons, I said. I hadn't had much contact with dragons after the war started other than... Spike? Is it really you? That's right, it's me, Spike said with a smile. It's good to see you again, Scootaloo. You too, Spike, I said as I tried to wrap my mind around this. I never thought I'd see any pony I'd known from before the war ever again. What happened to your eye? I lost it about 10 years ago in the battle with the Enclave, Spike said. That made me pause. The Enclave was still around after 200 years? I'd have hoped that they would have fallen apart by now, but then again, the cloud cover has been broken, and maybe that meant the Enclave was finally out of the way. I'm sorry, Spike, I said with a sad smile as I placed a hoof on his claw. Does this mean that the Enclave is gone for good? I'm sorry, Scootaloo, but no. The Enclave remnants are still around, and they've been plaguing Equestria for 8 years now, Spike said with a frown. The NCR has been trying to stop them, but... I sighed and nodded in understanding. I just had to hope that there was going to be more chances to stop them. Come on, I'll give you a lift to the NCR territory, Spike said and knelt down. I climbed up onto his back and he took off and flew towards the new Canterlot Republic. I just hoped that I'd be able to find something out there. So, are there any other ponies from before the war still around? I asked Spike. Honestly, I doubted it, but, I mean, it was worth asking. There are a couple, actually, Spike said, and that surprised me a little bit. It has been over 200 years. How many ponies could still be alive? They're living in NCR territory, so it should be easy enough to find them. I paused for a long moment, and there was another question I wanted to ask, but I didn't know how to ask it. I had to put it aside for a moment, though. Spike didn't know about them, so it was unlikely that he'd have spent the time looking into it. The stables, how did they turn out? I asked seriously. I wasn't even sure what I was going to learn from this. It's complicated. Some of them turned out fine, like 2 or 26. Others, they didn't make it, Spike said with a pain tone in his voice. Some of the experiments backfired, others just fell apart. I'm sorry, Scootaloo. My heart fell at that. We had tried our best to help ponies. While I figured that Stable 1 would be sabotaged, there was still hope that many of them would have survived. I didn't know how many ponies had died because of our stupid mistakes, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Ultimately, I knew that I'd be blamed for it, and maybe I deserved it. If I may ask, Scootaloo, how are you just still alive? Spike asked me curiously. I mean, there are a lot of indications you died at Rainbow Dash's shack. To be honest, Spike, I don't know, I admitted to him. The last thing I remember before falling unconscious is Rainbow Dash holding me. Wait, actually, what happened to Rainbow Dash? We don't know, Spike admitted. I looked down sadly at that, and I'd hoped maybe he could at least give me some closure on that. How long after the bombs fell did you get exiled? About 8 years, I said. 8 years. That means Rainbow Dash survived her encounter with Gilda after all, Spike said, which made me blink a little. It's complicated. We have a lot to get you filled in on. I'm sure we can get the copy of the Book of Little Pip. That should help. Little Pip? I asked confused. I guess that would mean something I have to learn in time. Oh, you'll find out soon enough, Spike said. We're coming up on Memoria. You can find a caravan heading to Junction Town here. Thanks, Spike, I said with a smile. I'm glad you're still around. I'm glad you are too, Scootaloo, Spike said with a smile. If you ever need anything, I'll be here for you, no matter what. Spike, there is one thing, I said as we came in for a landing and I climbed off his back. Before I was exiled, I had a husband and daughter. I know it's been too long, but do you know if I have any family left? Spike looked at me for a long moment with a pained look in his eye. Maybe I shouldn't have asked. Sorry, Scootaloo, but I don't know. Spike said with a shake of his head. I can look into it and the NCR may have some more information. I do hope you find them, Scootaloo. I sighed and gave him one more hug. He gave me a bag filled with caps, saying that it would be helpful in memoria, and then took flight and took off. Take care, Spike. I hope to see you again, I said with a smile as I trotted off towards town. It was strange to be back in the world with non-Pegasi after spending 8 years above the cloud cover. Though, of course, that was over 200 years ago, and things have seemed to change a lot since then. The stairs, though. That, on the other hoof, that still kind of felt like they were the same. Even back when I was above the clouds, ponies saw me as some kind of monster, once the truth came out about stable tech. Well, except for Skywalker, he always saw past that. He was a good pony. I missed him a lot, and honestly, I kind of wish that I knew what happened to him. Then there was Cloudy, my sweet little filly. I never should have let them exile me and leave her behind. I just hope that wherever she was, she forgave me for being a terrible mother. I looked around Memoria, and it was an interesting town that looked like it had been made out of permacloud remains, of Cloudsdale and the remains of some sort of fleet of airships. I finally found myself looking at the memorial itself, and it was apparently for the ponies lost when Cloudsdale was destroyed. I sighed a little at reading the names, and there were names that I recognized. Good ponies that I've known in Ponyville. Why had I lived when so many good ponies had died on that terrible day? I even saw Derpy's name, and she didn't deserve this. Especially not after what happened at Dinky. Well, well, it seems that we've got a Scootaloo fan, pony boys. A voice came from behind me, and I turned around to look at 3 rough-looking stallions looking at me. And they didn't look happy. Let's show her what we think of that. Look, I don't want any trouble, I said. I didn't really have much to defend myself with. I just wished that I could fly away. So just leave me alone and things won't get ugly. Huh. Littermare thinks she's so tough, one of the others said. We'll have some real fun with her. I crouched defensively, and it's been years since I'd taken any sort of self-defense course while I'd worked for Stapletech, but it was starting to come back to me. I just hoped that I'd survive the next few minutes. Then there was a crack of a shot as a bullet impacted the ground near one of the stallions, causing them all to recoil. 3-on-1 ain't fair. I'd leave the mare alone if y'all don't want to mess with me. The stallion's voice came with a country accent. We'd all turned to see a rust-colored Pegasus stallion with a black cowboy hat and 2 rifles attached to a battle saddle looking at us intensely. Yes, Calamity, the lead stallion said, and the 3 of them galloped off. I straightened up and looked at the newcomer for a long moment. Thanks, you really saved my flank back there, I said with a weak smile before I started to walk off again, only to be interrupted by the stallion. Well, I didn't think that I'd ever be meeting Scootaloo, the stallion said, especially since you're, well, supposed to be dead. I turned back to look at him, and he recognized me. And that's when I saw what was on his flank. Not a cutie mark, but instead, like me. He had a brand in the shape of Rainbow Dash's cutie mark. Just like me. He was in exile from the Grand Pegasus Enclave. So that's how you wound up back here, huh? The other Dashite, or Calamity as I learned his name, was after I finished telling him about what happened. That's quite the story, but you won't be the first one. Yeah, tell me about it. I'm still processing it, to be honest, I admitted with a shrug. It has been a bit of a surprise to find out that the Dashite term had still stuck, but it did fit us both. I'd been surprised to see that he was wearing a pipbuck, though. It was golden and had the Dashite symbol on it. Did he come from the Pegasus stables? No, that would be too personalized. What's on your mind? Calamity asked, which snapped me out of my thoughts. Oh, sorry, just looking at your pipbuck. I guess it's a custom model? I asked curiously. Oh, it is? Well, honestly, it's a kind of a long story, Calamity said. Would you believe that this is the element of loyalty? Oh, yeah, I guess that did make sense. I remembered hearing about a project being done by the Ministry of Arcane Science that used them after the Rainbow Pirates stopped working during the war. I just didn't actually think that they'd come up again like this. Though I had to wonder why it looked like a pipbuck. Maybe it changed for the time? If I may ask, how did you... I said, and I trailed off as I noticed to his brand. Same way you did. I was fed up with the Enclave and wanted to do the right thing, but I've got no regrets, Calamity said, and I understood that, though I did regret having to leave my family behind. Listen, do you have any plans for what you're gonna do? Honestly, I don't know, I admitted with a shrug. I haven't been awake for very long, and, well, I don't really have anywhere to go. Well, I'm heading back to Junction Town in the morning with some others. I know it's not much, but at least it's a start, Calamity offered. You seem pretty accepting about this whole thing, I said as I brushed my mane back. I thought back to everything I'd done. I thought ponies would hate me for what I did. I ain't gonna lie, there will be ponies that don't like you for what you did, Calamity said. I don't blame them, but I did hear about your reasons during that war. You're a good pony, Scootaloo. That's all you really need to know. I smiled a little bit, and that helped a lot. Maybe things weren't going to be so bad. Things weren't going to be easy, sure, but at least I could survive. Or, I hope so at least. That night I was asleep on the couch at Calamity's house in Memoria. It was a restless sleep at first, but when I finally managed to sleep, my dreams turned disturbing, to say the least. I was in Ponyville again, the happy Ponyville that I had grown up in. There was no signs of the war, no posters from the Ministry of Image, no soldiers or morale officers going through town looking for zebra sympathizers. It was peaceful. But it still felt wrong somehow, like there was something unnatural about everything I had been through during the war, everything we'd been through as a nation. I started to move through town, and I got a few hellos from ponies. It was weird, it felt so normal. And then that's when everything changed, and there was an explosion that rocked the town. I turned to see the massive cloud of a balefire explosion, and I covered my eyes with a foreleg, trying to block out the image I knew what was coming out of ponies I had to grow up with, and I didn't want to see it. Why did you live when we didn't? A voice called out. I uncovered my eyes and was shocked to see the pony still alive, but not burnt crawling towards me. I didn't mean to, I said, crying. I just... You don't deserve to live, not after what you did, another pony shouted. You left innocent ponies to die. You left your family behind above the clouds. I didn't have a choice. I said, starting to cry, and I didn't know what to say. I just wanted to do the right thing. Well, see what you got for it? You're just as bad as all the ponies you wanted to punish, a third said, and before I could reply, I felt a pair of hooves around my neck that began choking me. I screamed as the world around me went black and swung a hoof at my attacker on pure instinct, feeling it connect with him. Ow! What was that for? An accented voice said, and I looked at some pony. Wait, no, that was Calamity. I had met him yesterday, and he was rubbing his muzzle where I'd hit him. Oh, crap, I'm sorry, I said, finally snapping out of my daze. I was sweating like crazy. Are you okay? I didn't hit you too hard, did I? I'm fine. I've taken a lot worse, but you have a mean right hook, Scootaloo, Calamity said with a chuckle. Are you okay? Looks like you were having a little terrible nightmare or something. No, not a nightmare, I said as I realized exactly what happened. It was something worse, a night terror. We were seated at the table in the small house, and I took a long drink of opal cherry that Calamity had been saving. Really, I never knew why most ponies preferred Sparkle Cola. The opal sodas were always better to me. Okay, now that you have raided my soda supply, mind telling me what that was all about? Calamity asked me. Well, when I was just a little filly, I lost my parents in an accident, I said. I survived, though, and that's when they started. The war just made things worse, but it's been years since I actually, had one. Ah, I see. I wish I could help you with that, Calamity said with a sigh. Though, you always could talk to my wife. She could help you out with that. Yeah, sure, I said with a smile. Hey, thanks again for saving my flank back there. Don't worry about it. I don't like seeing ponies ganging up on some pony like that, Calamity said. We sat in silence for a long moment, and there wasn't really a lot we could say. I reached into my bags and took out the picture I had of me and my family. I had found it near the pod, and it was slightly faded, but I could see the smiling face of Cloudy as I lifted her above my head. I miss them so much. Is that of your family or something? Calamity asked. I glanced over at the Pegasus stallion, who was looking at me curious. Yeah, I said with a sigh as I put it down carefully. I don't really know what happened to them after I was exiled. I'd kind of like to maybe see if I still have any family out there somewhere. You know? Ah, I see. I wish I could help you with that, but the Enclave didn't exactly keep any records of you, or the descendants, at least none that I know of, Calamity said with a shake of his head. And I sighed a little bit, but it was predictable. Though, I've heard rumors about a pony out west with a striking resemblance to Rainbow Dash. I'm not sure if that helps. My ears perked up at that, and that could only mean one thing. Project Legacy actually survived. I'd admittedly had some reservations about it, but at least it was something. Really, I found the whole idea of making genetically engineered ponies kind of weird, but Eureka has told Sweetie Belle, Apple Bloom, and even Luna on the idea. It was something at least, and maybe I could look into it. Oh, thank you, Calamity, I said as I finished my drink. I should get back to bed. Sorry for waking you. Calamity just smiled and said it was alright before we headed back to our beds. The rest of the night passed pretty quickly. At least my dreams were normal again for some reason. I started gathering what little up I had and stretched out as we headed back to Memoria. It was still early in the morning, but it felt like the town was already coming to life. We made some stops at the shops in order to pick up some supplies for our trip to Junction Town, and I was surprised when Calamity had a suggestion. Here, this should suit you, he said as he gave me a coat and a fedora. I might not have a problem with you, but a lot of ponies are going to because of the stables, not to mention the Enclave Remnant. He had a point, of course. It was weird to hide who I was, but I paid for the clothes, and they fit surprisingly well. The coat was long enough to cover my cutie mark, and when pulled down a bit, the hat would just keep my features hidden. I looked like a pony from the old Shadow Spade adventures, I commented with a chuckle. I had a weakness for the radio dramas that Rarity put on during the war. Well, I'm all set. Where's your friend? She's waiting for us on the outskirts of town. Come on, Calamity said as I straightened out my hat and we started walking. It was funny, even after the apocalypse. It still kind of felt like I was home. Memoria was different than Ponyville, sure, but ponies seemed to at least still be willing to lend each other a hoof. Maybe things weren't so different here after all. When we reached the outskirts of town, there was a couple of ponies putting things into a wagon, and I froze for a moment. One of them was rotting, like she was literally a walking corpse. She was a Pegasus based on the wing bones, but it was still weird, like she was a zombie or something. Howdy, Ditzy. Silver Bell, we got a new guest coming along with us, Calamity said. That name, why did it sound so familiar? The zombie pony turned around at us and smiled, and that's when I noticed something familiar. Her eyes were yellow and facing two different directions, and there was only one pony in Equestria that those eyes could have belonged to. Derpy? I managed to stutter out. Derpy took out a chalkboard and a piece of chalk and began writing on it, and I blinked a little at that. Why wasn't she just talking to me? She just turned the chalkboard around and showed it to me. Hey, Scootaloo, it's good to see you again. Please call me Ditzy Doo, the chalkboard read. Oh, okay, Ditzy, sorry, I said as Ditzy smiled at me. I noticed that she had the same type of pip-buck on her foreleg. Sorry about reacting like that, I've just never seen a pony like, What are you exactly? Ditzy nodded in understanding, and she erased the board and wrote on it again. I'm a ghoul. Sorry if I scared you. Ghouls are ponies that have been affected by radiation, but they don't die, the teenage unicorn said as she poked her head out of the wagon. She was gray with a yellow mane, and she looked at me strangely. Hey, what's with the mysterious ne'er-do-well over there? She'll be accompanying us to Junction Town, Calamity explained as we climbed into the back of the wagon while Ditzy hitched herself up. Silverbell, meet Scootaloo. Something had been nagging at the back of my mind since I first saw Silverbell, then it hit me. Dear Celestia, she almost looked like Dinky, and I couldn't believe it. It was so surreal, really. She just looked so much like my old friend. I'm sorry, Dinky. I wish I could have saved you. Are you okay, Scootaloo? Calamity asked, and I realized I was staring. Sorry, it's nothing, I said as I shook my head clear to look at Silverbell. You just remind me of some pony that I used to know, is all. With that, we went quiet as the wagon moved on towards Junction Town. Silverbell gave me a copy of the first volume of the book of Little Pip to read, and I have to admit, I was a little curious. If I'm going to tell you the adventure of my life, explain how I got to this place with these people, and why I did what I'm going to do next, I should probably start by explaining a little bit about Pip-Bucks. I was amazed at what I was reading. Little Pip was a stable dweller from Stable 2, and that was a good sign. It meant at least some of the stables had actually survived, and Stable 2 had been where Sweetie Belle wants to be the overmare, and that meant she might have survived the apocalypse, and that at least gave me some relief, at least. It was kind of surreal to read about the adventures of a pony that was born years after I should have died, but Little Pip was an interesting pony. I was surprised to learn that all three of my traveling companions had crossed paths with her, and even traveled with her in Calamity's case. I had to wonder about how many other ponies had made out of the stables like she did. Who knows, maybe there was hope for the whole project after all. On the last night before we reached Junction Town, we were camped in a quiet part of the wasteland. Calamity was poking at the fire while I looked up at the sky, and after thinking the cloud cover would last forever, it was actually nice to see the stars again. I took out the photograph again and I sighed as I examined it. It was hard to believe that I'd just never see either of them again. Are you okay? A voice asked, and I was surprised when I realized Ditsy Doo was talking to me. I looked up to see her holding the chalkboard, and she must have talked to get my attention. Sorry, Ditsy, I was kind of in my own little world there, I said with a weak smile. I'm just, thinking about the whole thing with the war and my family. Ditsy nodded in understanding, and she wrote on the chalkboard, I understand. Maybe it wasn't so bad being a survivor. There were ponies out there who could understand what I was going through, like Ditsy. I shifted my wings a little and just sighed. I don't know, maybe, I feel like I failed as a mother because I just couldn't be there, I finally said. I can't imagine what Cloudy must have thought of me. Ditsy looked at me sympathetically, but her ears drooped slightly. Dear Luna, was I talking about this to a mare that had lost her own daughter at Littlehorn? What was wrong with me? Sorry, Ditsy, that was insensitive of me, I said with a sigh. Ditsy just smiled a little and just shook her head, wrote on the board again. It's okay. I still miss her. It's okay. I still miss her, Ditsy said with a sad smile, and she hugged me. I was sure that I was getting a minor dose of radiation from the hug, but I didn't care. Right now, all I cared about was having some pony there for me. As we started to get closer to Junction Town, I got my first real look at the town. I was surprised to see that it was mostly comprised of buildings made out of what looked like old train cars, and it was an interesting design, but hey, it worked. I closed up Volume 1 of the Book of Little Pip, and it was an interesting read, and it was definitely an insight into what happened in Equestria. It was amazing, really, how much things changed, but at the same time, some things still stayed the same. Ponies lived, loved, and made friendships long after the apocalypse came. I guess it's true. Friendship really is magic sometimes. We pulled up in front of a shop called Absolutely Everything. Me and Calamity helped them get the equipment unloaded from the wagon. Before we left, though, Ditsy surprised me with a rough look, battle saddle with 2 basic rifles on it. No, I couldn't, I said as I raised a hoof in protest. Ditsy shook her head and wrote on the chalkboard, I insist, it's the least I can do for you. Besides, you're gonna need it if you want to survive, Calamity pointed out. I slipped it on and checked it out. It's been a long while since I had taken a class on combat. Peekaboo my head of security had instead. These rifles were a bit more worn than what I had been studying with, but they seemed to be working at least. Thank you, Ditsy. This means a lot to me, I said, and I gave the older mare one more hug. See you around? Ditsy nodded and smiled before heading into the shop. Come on, I'm sure that Velvet will want to talk to you, Calamity said, and started walking again with me close behind. I got a few looks as we went down the streets of Junction Town. Maybe it was the way that I was dressed, or something else entirely. I was surprised to see how much variety there was in Junction Town. I saw griffins and zebras, living and working alongside ponies. Things really had changed since the war. It wasn't going to be easy, but I think I could make my home here. As we entered the building for something called the Followers of the Apocalypse, I was surprised to hear the sound of some ponies singing, and we entered one of the rooms where the unicorn mare with charcoal black fur and a white mane with red and gold stripes. She stopped singing when we entered and smiled. Hey there, Calamity, she said with a smile, and trotted over and gave my companion a kiss before looking at me. Who's this? We met up in Memoria. I figured you can help her out a little bit, Calamity said as the mare looked at me curiously. Do you mind taking off this silly hat of yours? The mare asked. I guess, I said nervously before taking the hat off, which caused the mare to take a step back. Yeah, I know. Well, this is certainly gonna make things interesting, she said with a sigh. Scootaloo, may I ask how you're still alive? I gave her a short version of my story, which she listened to intently. She asked me a few questions about the stasis pod, but I can only tell her what little I knew from their development. It wasn't really much help. Well, that's certainly interesting, the mare said, and smiled a little. Oh, by the way, I'm Velvet Remedy, by the way. It's a pleasure to meet you. I was shocked. I knew that she was around from the book, but to actually meet her, and not to mention the fact that she was Sweetie's descendant. Wow. It's a pleasure to meet you too, I said before finally smiling. So, what can the Followers of the Apocalypse help you with? Velvet asked. You seem to be physically okay. I told her about the night terrors. I had several during the trip to Junction Town as well, which made her pause briefly. I told her about the fact that I had suffered from them before, which prompted the obvious question as to what had brought them about when I was a filly. It was the accident that, killed my parents. It started after all of that, I said and rubbed my foreleg. They were always of the accident. Same thing during the war, but they're just different. I keep seeing Ponyville and the ponies I grew up with, and then
It burns in balefire and...
I let the thought trail off and looked at Velvet, who looked at me sadly.
This isn't the first time I've heard about this,
Velvet admitted.
It became a big problem during the war with the Crimson Empire, and I've heard of it existing during the Great War as well. You're suffering from what's called survivor's guilt, Scootaloo. It's the side effect from your trauma from the war. Trauma, but I've never actually saw combat,
I said, not without trying, but my condition made me ineligible for service.
Scootaloo, I've heard about what you went through, and you were affected in a major way,
Velvet said with a sigh.
Wartime stress disorder, right? Except you were never really treated, at least not effectively. Is there anything you can do to help?
I asked hopefully.
I'm sorry, but this isn't really my area of expertise,
Velvet said with a sigh, and she looked thoughtful for a moment.
Your best bet might be to head for Ten Pony Tower in Manhattan, actually. There's a pony there that's part of the followers named Focus. He may be able to help you a little bit. Thank you,
I said with a smile. It really was good to know that there were still ponies out there willing to help others.
What's the best way to get there?
Well, there should be a caravan heading that way for a few days, Calamity offered. We can see if you need to brush up on your shooting, and I'm sure we can get you on that caravan easily enough.
Okay, that sounds good,
I said with a smile. It was good to have a plan, even if I wasn't quite sure what to do yet. You're doing good, Calamity said with a smile as I managed to hit the target just a bit off the center with my battle saddle. These rifles seem to pull a little to the left, but you gotta get the gist of it.
Well, yeah, I took some training, though. That was a long time ago. Years,
I said as I lined up the rifles again. This was taking some getting used to, but I could do it. I pulled the triggers again, and this time it was a lot better centered. Nicely done, Scoots, Calamity said, and turned where he heard some pony approach while I checked my rifles. That's when I heard a voice I'd never, ever thought I'd hear again. It was soft and kind, but it filled with sadness. This was a voice that I'd never, ever forget.
Scootaloo? Is that really you? Wait, Fluttershy?
I asked shocked as I turned around to see the familiar yellow Pegasus mare looking at me.
How are you? It's kind of a long story,
Fluttershy said.
I was kind of turned into a tree for 200 years by mutated poison joke.
I could not believe it. Fluttershy was actually still alive after everything that had happened. I didn't really know what to do or make of that, and she'd been a traitor and had given the secrets of Megaspells to the zebras, which was part of the reason why we were in the situation, but... Was I any better? I created experiments and subjected good ponies to them. I trapped ponies in Stable 1 because of the actions of the nobility. We were both the villain of this piece, really, and survivors. And that was all that really mattered. I can't believe that you're actually alive, Fluttershy said as she hugged me gently. I was surprised, but I hugged back.
I'm so happy to see you again. You too, Fluttershy,
I said with a smile as we stayed there for a long moment.
I'm sorry, Fluttershy, but during the war, I blamed you and the others for a lot of things. It was wrong of me, and I understand that now. Scootaloo, it's okay. We both did things that we're not proud of,
Fluttershy said with a weak smile.
It's not about what we did in the past. It's what we do to make up for them in the present.
I smiled and nodded, and we finally released a hug. I was just glad that I wasn't alone in the world.
Do you have everything you need?
Velvet asked, and I was getting everything together to take the trip to the caravan.
The food, water, extra ammunition for my rifles, caps. Yeah, I think I'm all set,
I said as I put the last of it in my bags.
Velvet, if I may ask about Sweetie Belle, I know she made it into Stable 2, but you want to know if she missed you?
Velvet asked with a sympathetic look.
I think she missed both you and Applebloom a lot from what I understand. It was hard for her to have left you behind in Equestria, but I think she'd be happy knowing that you'd survived.
I smiled a little at that. Even if I would never be able to see her again, I could see a lot of Sweetie Belle and Velvet Remedy.
Well, I should probably get going. The caravan isn't going to wait forever,
I said with a nod.
I'm glad I got to meet you, Velvet. You too, Scootaloo. I hope you find what you're looking for out there,
Velvet said, and then she felt around in her bags and took out a golden locket.
This belonged to Sweetie Belle. I think she'd like for you to have it.
I was a bit surprised, but I opened up to see the picture of the three of us as fillies. I smiled and closed it back up, placing it around my neck and hugging Velvet.
Thank you. This means a lot,
I said, trying not to cry.
You're welcome, Scootaloo,
Velvet said as she hugged back.
You'll always have a place with us here in Junction Town.
I smiled and released the hug before I trotted out of the building to go meet up with the caravan. As we started up towards Manhattan, I took one last look back towards Junction Town. I had a long ways to go on my journey, but things were already going pretty well. I just hoped that things would continue this way. Level up. Perk received. Survivor of the Apocalypse. Details. Against the odds, you survived the apocalypse that affected the rest of Equestria. Now you just need to find your place in the world. You get a little boost to your radiation resistance.